pod. Let's call it. Let's call our Deschutes County Board of County Commissioners meeting to order. It happens to be Monday, June 10th, 2024. I do want to make a comment. When we were having our agenda conference last Thursday, we determined that an hour for deliberations for the county comprehensive plan might be an appropriate time limit for today's meeting because it is a rather huge issue. So I just want to make that the group aware of that. So let's go with item number 1, please. Carlin House.
Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Caroline House. I'm a senior planner with the Deschutes County Planning Division. So I'm just here today to answer any questions and make sure the board feels prepared for a hearing that's scheduled for Wednesday for a comprehensive plan amendment and zone change. And the property we're talking about is just north of the city of Bend at Deschutes Junction, formerly known as the Funny Farm property. And they've requested to rezone the property, or excuse me, they're going to start with a comprehensive plan designation change from agricultural to rural industrial. And then they have a matching zone change request from EFU to rural industrial. And so this will be the second hearing for this review. The first hearing, the hearings officer recommended denial based on the applicant not demonstrating compliance with statewide planning goal 5, specific to scenic views along Highway 57. And since that time, the board has actually approved a very similar request. It's the LBNW LLC decision. It's just north of this property, and the same issue was reviewed as part of that. And the applicants submitted an almost identical response for their property. And that's what they're asking the board to review, in addition to all their other materials on Wednesday. I think that covers kind of the high level issues, but I'm happy to provide any more background and your questions.
Could you remind me, or I don't know that I've been in this situation before, so the 2 hearings, with a denial from the hearings officer, I've always, it's usually been approvals that come to us, and it's a requirement that it's in front of the Board of Commissioners. So a denial is that same path
Yes.
For a zone change?
So it's really important to keep in mind, at least for this particular request, from an agricultural to a rural industrial request, the first hearing is just a recommendation. It's not a decision. There are other times, like you just reviewed one recently for a surface line change, where that can be the final decision of the county. But in this particular case, the first hearing is just a recommendation. But oftentimes, yeah, you're correct. That's generally recommended to be an approval.
And then one more question, water rights. It says, and there may be deeper in here, but I saw a few references to water rights, but what are the specific water rights?
So those have all been abandoned as far as I understand.
Oh, okay.
So,
because it says while some water rights for farming purposes is available, or some water is available. So there's no water rights.
My understanding, and I'll ask the applicant to really speak to this on Wednesday, is that they're not actually applying those water rights, that they may control them, but they're not actually being applied on the property. But I can certainly ask.
Yeah, so just for clarity,
follow up on that.
Are there agricultural water rights associated with those parcels? That be clear again. And what they are specifically.
Yeah, how much?
Okay.
And with who? I'm guessing COID, but we could do. I haven't had a chance to dig into the record. I read the full staff report. I may have missed it. I didn't see how big this property is.
So,
Or the 3 tax lots.
so it's 3 tax lots. It's right around 20 acres. I want to say it's like 20.34, but I can confirm in just a second. 20.36 acres.
Pretty good. I want to get a better sense of this rezone application in context. There's been a lot of EFU to RR to EFU to rural industrial rezone in this kind of immediate vicinity, and it would be awesome to have a map that kind of to help kind of.
I might have that for you today, actually. So this is submitted by the applicant recently, so I'll just give them all down to you. Take one just for the discussion. This just identifies one of the tax lots when you get it. There's one to the north and there's a tiny one at the south west corner, but that identifies where properties have been zoned to rural industrial, and there's a older rural commercial corner across the street as well.
That really small one.
Yeah, the lighter kind of gray purple color.
That's rural commercial.
Which is different than rural industrial. It's a legacy zone.
We're looking at this red outline property.
And it includes, this is what the applicant, this is their material, so I can give you a better method. But it goes a little bit north of that and
Just to the south of that, that's the Willamette Greystone.
correct.
Yeah, because the design is not the same from this map and this
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
yeah.
Even I can tell that. Like, ooh.
Yeah, I think there's another 8 acres. on the front of that red boundary that
Oh, okay, because they didn't go up and do the little triangle up there.
exactly.
Okay.
This one to the way up north here, that's the LPNW.
Yeah. And it extends beyond this map. So it's kind of, yeah, it's a longer portion than what's shown in this map.
Do you have the exact percentage of 7 and 8 soil? I've got it highlighted here, but I just wondered, do we have that? Is it buried? Is that
It's
over
in the
there?
record, but I can definitely make sure that's in the staff report.
Okay, I just was like, I was trying to find it predominantly 7 and 8 is what it says, but I just wondered, is it 60%, 80? What?
I can definitely make sure that's in my staff report.
Thinking about kind of the scenarios that post this decision. If the board was to deny this application, is it, what is the process to come back, basically? I mean, to remediate this goal 5 resource concern and then bring the application back? Is that likely that would be what would happen, or?
No, I don't really know the answer to that question. I'd probably look to Stephanie or maybe Peter. Have you seen someone come in for a second review?
Good afternoon, Stephanie Marshall, Senior Assistant Legal Counsel. I'd have to open up the code, but I do not believe that there's any prohibition for, against reapplying for the same zone change, comprehensive plan amendment that was denied. I think that, a well-represented or well-educated, advised applicant would make sure that, these
It's
identified-
whatever
Yes,
the
exactly.
basis was for initial
Right.
protection.
Right.
Can you all talk a little bit more about that goal 5 concern and the LPNW? I remember the discussion of that, but can you refresh? I remember reviewing that. Can you refresh me on kind of what we learned through that process? Or
So I'll place my
Yeah, maybe you can
speak more. Well, he's more.
I'll let you start.
Yeah, so kind of at a high level, the Land Use Board of Appeals actually reviewed this issue and remanded it back to the county for further review. So goal 5 identifies different protected natural resources. It includes scenic views, historic sites, as well as what other
Wildlife.
open spaces is the other one, sorry. But wildlife fits under natural resources, so like the goal 5, mule deer inventory is another protected resource under that. So the Land Use Board of Appeals found that there were new uses allowed in the rural industrial zone that were not previously allowed in the EFU zone that would conflict with that protected, in this case, scenic resource along Highway 97. So in the LBNW decision, they came back, they generated a new site-specific EC analysis, which is an economic, social, environmental, and energy analysis to see what would conflict with resource. And then the conclusion that the board reached based on those materials was that it was not going to affect the protected resource by allowing those new uses that were allowed in the rural industrial zone. And so in this case, the applicants actually submitted a lot of the materials from the LDNW decision and modified them slightly to match their property. So that's the big part of what they've submitted to date, at least, is the line on their EC analysis, but made some modifications to it. So I can definitely, I recommend reviewing that because that's important, and I would be happy to pull that out if that would be helpful for the board to have on Wednesday.
But so the hearings officer acknowledges all of that, but still makes this recommendation to reject?
Great question. So I should have also explained, so this review started in 2022, and that was actually at the same time when the LDNW decision was being appealed to LUBA and came back to the county. So the hearings officer review happened before the board's review of the LDNW decision. And so the applicant wanted to wait for that process to finish to make sure they can follow the same path that that applicant took for this particular request.
Okay.
So there's kind of multiple things happening at once. This applicant has to wait again to make sure that they could have a path to follow and hopefully, get approved as well.
Okay, thank you. So the hearings officer didn't have those results from the LDNW when they made this recommendation. But we are allowed to take into account those, the outcomes from LDNW in determining whether to approve or reject this.
Yeah, and obviously the applicant has to demonstrate what LDNW demonstrated on their property also applies to theirs. So that's what they have recently submitted more materials to the records specific to their property, but a lot of it's carried over from that LDNW application.
Well, they definitely waited because this was done March 21st of 23. So
And that was the first hearing. They
Yes.
actually applied in 2022. So it's,
patience.
yeah, they had that.
Stephanie Marshall, I just wanted to thank my colleague over there, Anthony Regini. I have the code provision that I can read for purposes of people that are watching online. The District County Code 22-28-040A states that the specific application is denied on its merits. Reapplication for substantially the same proposal may be made at any time after the date of the final decision denying the initial application. So again, sharing not only for your benefit, but for anybody else attending. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
Yes.
Are there any further questions?
So this will be a public hearing, applicant, making the case, the whole application.
Did we determine the times or anything like that?
I was wanting to check on that. So are we going to go with the regular, what we typically do, 30 minutes for the applicant, 3 minutes for those in opposition, 3 minutes for, 3 minutes for those in support, then 3 minutes for those in opposition, and then 10 minutes for rebuttal.
That makes sense.
Okay, and we don't have any agencies that have asked to testify, so we
Okay.
have that prepared. You can obviously modify it.
If we need
It's
to.
discretion.
Okay, great.
I guess my last question, I would love to hear input or guidance on how we should, how we can think about all of the other rezone activity that's occurred in this area. On the one hand, I know that one of the things to think about when reviewing a rezone application is what is the other land immediately adjacent zones. It's now a whole bunch of that has been rezoned as rural industrial, and that kind of supports the application. But I mean, just in the 3 years that I've served on the board of commissioners, there's been a massive amount of rezone to rural industrial in this area. At this point, we're talking about an industrial park's worth of rural industrial land just clustered around Deschutes Junction. And I mean, are we allowed to think about that, you know, kind of in the broader land use planning context, or are we just really narrowly focusing on a specific application at this point?
I'll jump in, and it looks like, Peter will, have a few things to say as well. So for a rezone application, you'll have to show changed circumstances or mistake was made in the original zoning. I mean, and that doesn't change application to application. You know, as far as the cumulative impacts, there's not a criterion that says it can be weighed one way or the other. And I think really at that point, I'm just gonna leave my comment there because I'm gonna have Peter chime in.
Sure, Peter Gutowski, Community Development Director. It's an excellent question. Just for context, since 2018, Deschutes County's adopted, these have been acknowledged, I'll call them non-resource land plan amendment zone changes. Deschutes County approves more of these than any other county in the state by several factors. The Community Development Department a few years ago, I want to say around maybe 2015, with the board's direction, clarified a policy that's acknowledged in our comprehensive plan that basically underscores that on a case-by-case basis, property owners can and do successfully demonstrate that their land is not does not meet the definitions of agricultural land and the various kind of factors that go along with it. And so the policy acknowledges that that's in existence, the burden that the applicant has to bear. So your question is, there's really two parts to it. So our existing comprehensive plan allows applicants to make these requests, and they have. The economy has changed, the dynamics have changed. We've had a handful of plan amendment zone changes that have taken, two that have taken advantage of their proximity to the city of Bend. I think it's not too far of a stretch to think that they're positioning themselves for future urbanization at some point in the future. But to the extent that the board has an interest or it has concerns about plan amendment zone changes, one can always revisit our policies. We tried to do this a few years ago with a robust non-resource lands program that looked at 4 to 5 subdivisions that were pre-platted that have resource zoning. We also had a plan in place to look at the plan amendment zone change process on a piecemeal basis to come up with a more holistic analysis. And based on testimony from the state and several environmental NGOs, the board, in my opinion, wisely withdrew those amendments because it was going to be very difficult to justify. Now, that doesn't preclude, again, though, the board, if they ever wanted to revisit our policies as it pertains to applicant-initiated plan amendment zone changes, you could do that. And you can be more restrictive than state law. You could focus in countywide in sub areas. And the last best comment I would make, we've had several conversations with the board about the plan amendment zone change patterns that appear to be occurring on the eastern flank of Bend and what that may represent if they ever were developed at a rural density, what that could do to future urbanization for the city of Bend. So there's been talk about a high desert zone. That's actually a plug to the comprehensive plan update. There's a policy that just says explore those kinds of opportunities and conversations in a robust manner. But that leads into kind of urban reserves and other conversations. So it's an excellent question. There's been a lot of history with this topic, and it's, you know, we still have, you know, 2 other applications that are working their way through the hearings officer's process that fall under the same category. And I think these trends will, if it passes any indication in the future, the Deschutes County will continue to see this interest as a result of growth and development and market pressures. There's a lot of discretion that can be that can be, absorbed and then directed by the Board of County Commissioners if there's concerns about how this program is, or how these opportunities incrementally are impacting, land use and zoning, countywide. So, we've had these conversations, I feel like as long as I've been here for almost 20 years and they continue to be quite pronounced.
Peter, when did the solar farm go in on 97? The solar farm that never has any trees growing?
I can tell you that, well, there's, I have a
Dead
table,
trees.
did you, what's the, there's one, yeah, we had solar farms, I think probably anywhere between 2015 or 2016.
Is that what it was?
Oregon was, we have this, this is the one off of Highway 97?
Right,
Where
the
we
one
always
on
have
the
trees?
east side that you drive by,
I'm thinking,
on the way to the airport.
I'm thinking that's Saturn, for Highway 97, maybe you just said that, so that
It's
was
right
approved,
south of the
that was
gun club.
approved in, of May of 2016, and we had an improvement agreement that was signed a year later in 2017.
It was a scenic zone at that time, right?
Correct, that's in the land.
And that's why they had to put those trees up.
Correct,
And who's gonna water those trees?
correct. We often, like, we're always, alerted to when one of those trees is not getting watered and, our code enforcement team reaches out and, shortly thereafter or soon thereafter, it seems a new tree is planted. So it's a bit of a, chasing event.
Okay. I just was curious.
Yeah, no, so anyway, hopefully that's, Commissioner Chang, that gives you the context, but, you know, the board can always revisit our existing policies to provide guidance on these types of plan amendment zone changes. I mean, I guess for the record, there's no obligation to approve these. However, we have an existing policy that explicitly supports applicants, if they can meet the requisite criteria, to demonstrate why their circumstances have changed, just like you noted through the zone change criteria, to look at for different zoning and new opportunities.
But that is kind of more of a policy level consideration. And we are in the middle of a quasi judicial review process.
Correct.
So I mean, okay.
The goalposts have been established, so a new policy would have to be applied to a later application.
Yeah, I
That's why-
know that, I know that, but I mean.
Yeah.
I guess if we want to have a policy discussion about whether we basically want an industrial park big enough to site a data center at Deschutes Junction, that should basically happen after this, after the review of this application.
Well, I would suggest that, yeah, to the extent that it could be, whether it actually occurred or perceived as occurring, that new policy was being developed midstream, that could be a concern, for someone who's being challenged the decision of the board.
They're not precluded necessarily from applying, that's for this particular question, but
Right.
rely on a new policy within the current requirements.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a good clarification.
I can name stuff.
Yes.
During the review of a specific application that we're not dealing with. Oh, nothing. Okay. That is what that's a lot of industrial land concentrated in one area that has all been, I mean, Willamette Greystone is, I don't know how long that's so zoned that way, but I mean, there's a lot of rezone to rural industrial happening right in that Deschutes Junction area.
And I would say, I think the rural industrial concentration is, I mean, this isn't a stretch, but I think it's a direct result of not having enough industrial land. Those are market pressures, I think, that are contributing to this. The city of Bend, city of Redmond, price points, are, I think, are contributing to interest and exploration for rural industrial zoning near Deschutes Junction. And I often hear about some of the challenges and the expense that goes with industrial uses in the city, just given the public facilities that are required, the system development charges that are required, plus the transportation improvements versus opportunities in the rural counties. So you can look at it from multiple perspectives.
The exact inverse of that is that you might find economic development entities inside the cities who are really concerned that their industrial parks are being undermined by competition.
Yeah,
External competition.
that's good. Yeah, that's a very good counterpoint to that those factors.
Any other questions? Okay, all right, we'll see you on Wednesday then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, Nicole Mardell, Senior Planner with Deschutes County Community Development. And just wanted to clarify, we're for what we're calling deliberations, but it's essentially your preparation for deliberations. We just title it deliberations on the agenda so that we had some flexibility in the conversation, so that we can avoid like a procedural error if we veer into discussing topics in depth.
Thank you.
Yeah, so with that, just wanted to provide a bit of grounding before we jump into our discussion today. So today we're here to prepare you for deliberations on the comprehensive plan update process. To recap our process, the board held 4 public hearings and left the written record open until May 30th at 4 p.m. We've received 363 public comments and 11 agency comments. The project webpage is on your memo, but the short link is deschutes.org/2040, and you'll click on the hearings page. Just a reminder, of course, that the board is responsible for viewing all record materials, including those agency and public comments. So the reason that we're here today for a preparation meeting in advance of deliberations is that this project is a little bit unique in its nature, just due to the depth and the variety of content in both the document itself and in the public comments that we've received. So typically, when we come to you for deliberations, it's on a specific text amendment or proposal. We provide you a matrix outlining potential decision points and staff comments and kind of the pros and cons from the public comments. But in this case, testimony really ranged from, a wide variety of the different chapters. Some comments discussed goal and policy suggested revisions, other suggested revisions to the chapter content, the background information. And we received everything from very broad comments generally about growth to very specific red line edits. So in talking through with staff and legal counsel, we thought it made sense to take a little bit of a different approach to your deliberative process. And today we essentially want to get your feedback on this approach. So it's a kind of a 3-legged stool. So the first that I wanted to talk about were Scrivener's errors, technical edits, things like fixing references, misspellings, punctuation, for instance, fixing a label on a figure. We don't believe that you need to discuss those. We have a running list of those as staff from public comments and just from our, secondary review of the document. So we're planning on just incorporating those in the next update. So you don't need to vote on those or anything. The second item, or what we're calling the parking lot,
I thought that was a very appropriate topic.
Thank you. It's an attachment to your memo, and essentially these are items that, based on the public comments, appear to be simply not allowed by current state law. Or there are things that the record from the process to date doesn't necessarily support. So things that may be outside of the scope of the proposed amendment, or maybe, one-time action more fitting for a subsequent process. So to give an example of this would be, we have an item on here that talks about potentially requiring appellants of land use decisions to pay appeal costs. That's, essentially outlined in state law. But in order to, reflect that we did hear this from community members, we felt it was still important to place it in this kind of ongoing list of items to revisit at a later time through an action plan. So post adoption of the comprehensive plan, we as staff are planning to create what we call an action plan, which will outline at 1, 5, and 10-year increments the implementation process for some of the goals and policies in the comprehensive plan. So kind of that ongoing projects that we can add to our annual work plan to do a deeper dive. Another example of this would be, we heard some interest at today's meeting as well of revisiting our process for EFU subzones or essentially, just redesignation of EFU lands. We see that as more fitting for an action plan because it involves such extensive community outreach processes, coordination with the state, that we might not get into that level of detail through the comprehensive plan. So rather than discussing it now, again, we felt it was more appropriate to put it in the parking lot to discuss at a later time. But of course, don't want to lose a lot of the excellent feedback that we heard from public comments. This could also be, an opportunity where there might be disagreement among community members, so the board could choose to add additional items to the quote parking lot. Another example of this might be water quality issues. We've heard a lot in public comment, a lot of interest about doing something about water generally, but there were quite a few different approaches in public comment about which direction would be preferred to take. So things like regulations versus incentives, or coordinating with the state, or doing more things locally. So again, that might be something that the board might choose to put in the parking lot to discuss at a later time through that action plan. In terms of our recommendation for your actual deliberations discussion, we recommend that you revisit 4 of the most commonly discussed chapters in the public comments. Those being chapter 3, farm and forest lands, chapter 5, natural resources, chapter 7, natural hazards, and chapter 11, which is unincorporated communities and destination resorts. So specifically, staff is proposing to present these materials to you at a deliberations meeting, so similar to what's in the packet today, where you have the full text of that chapter. And we could point out as staff in your kind of briefing memo and during the meeting, topics that were of significant public concern and board interest during the hearing process. And during your deliberations, we could essentially have that document open in real time in kind of a word processing, Word file, and, discuss recommended revisions from the board and essentially work those out in real time. Although that sounds pretty time intensive, we think that it would give more certainty to the board on consensus and agreement on some of the final draft language, so that when we return to you with that updated draft document for adoption, you know what to expect. What we're seeking from you today is general agreement on this approach, or general kind of feedback that this sounds appropriate, and to understand the depth in which you would like to engage. So to give you context, the Planning Commission took a pretty deep dive into crafting the language in the original draft that was released in August of 2023. So that took 14 hours over the course of 7 meetings, so a pretty extensive discussion. Then they went through the hearing and deliberative process to recommend edits, and they spent another 10 hours over the course of 7 meetings to provide their actual list of revisions. So you can hear that that's 24 hours, 14 meetings, quite a bit of time. And the Planning Commission was, of course, at a bit of a less refined kind of draft stage of the document. They were looking through, of course, less finalized language. So understandably, would spend more time on that. But we suggest starting out with potentially 4 meetings, 2-hour sessions for each of those meetings through the end of July. To work through those 4 chapters. If the board concludes early, that's fine. But if you wanted to adjust during the process as well and say, we want to discuss some other chapters or hear a few policies from a few other sections, you could certainly add that in now or later in the process as well. So with all that information, looking for your feedback on the general approach, that general timeline, and kind of direction for staff on moving forward with your deliberations.
Oh, very interesting. I have a question.
Yes.
Is this a weed?
It might be.
That's Mullen.
Anyway, is that what we want to have? Is it a we?
Mullen is an invasive species.
Okay, so maybe we don't want to have this picture.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I don't recognize that one. I don't think I have that one at my house, but I do pull a lot of other lovely weeds. So, yeah. Anyway, don't you think we should?
Not nearly as noxious as others, but
Yes, but still, if it's noxious, it's noxious. Anyway,
well, it's not.
We can crop it
it's not
over.
labeled noxious, but it is invasive.
we can crop it a little bit and go the other way. Thanks. Yeah, I know.
So Nicole, kind of going with that, that proposal, we would have a chunk of a board meeting for each chapter.
Correct.
Or four board meetings, chunk of each meeting for chapters 3, 5, 7.
Correct. And I think what we would plan similar to the planning commission is we would include the materials for those 4 chapters. So if for some reason you got through one chapter early and you had time left, you could jump to the next one. But I think starting out with 2 hours per chapter would probably make a lot of sense.
Well, the fact that I went through this with a highlighter. Yes, that, I think 2 hours really does make a lot of sense per chapter. Because there's a lot of detail in there that it does need to be looked at really closely. So it sounds like, and you said through the month of July then? Okay,
So I've been working with Brenda, so it appears that the board has availability starting June 26th, kind of each Wednesday after that, each subsequent meeting through the month of July.
July 3rd then. I think
If I have July 10th, July.
we're not going to do a meeting on the 3rd. I think we will.
Oh, so we could, yeah.
Because the 4th is on Thursday and then if someone wants to go out of town.
July 10th is, I will be out of town. I can attend virtually. But, you can pick one of the less complicated chapters. For July 10th.
So that means we could technically be done by the 17th then.
Potentially, yes.
Okay, that's good.
I'm curious if the board, if those 4 chapters, sound like a good amount to start with, or if there are any other chapters or specific sections that the board would like to identify now, to discuss, but as I mentioned, we could also identify that later on as well.
Yeah, I had some paper clips with some of my questions, but nothing that we need to do today. Yeah, just things I was wondering about.
I like the idea of working with these 4 chapters as proposed, knowing that this will be a complete document. So I mean, if there's any other loose ends that we're not talking about, you know, we can bring them for discussion. Probably not a 2-hour discussion, but yeah, I mean, if there's any loose ends, we can bring it back. Question about the attachment, the parking lot, is there gonna be an attachment of this document then, like holding on to these discussions that were not fitting into the document? Is it gonna be a published attachment?
Good question. I don't think we were planning on including it as an attachment to the comprehensive plan because we were planning to begin the action plan essentially immediately after. So we'd reflect all these topics in that action plan. But I don't see an issue if the board would like.
Like some kind of a
attach
reference,
it.
just, I remember this was a hot topic, or, why is this in here?
Memo or something like that.
Just being able to follow it, connect it together somehow.
And I did talk to the hydrologist today, Joe. I don't have his last name, but I've asked for it. And where there's that line in water on 50 feet per total decline, he actually gave me the specifics. And the fact that it's 55 feet in bend, and that's from 1980 on. I mean, so they were all kind of different, but it was like a 1.25 foot decline per year. I just like, when I saw that, I went, well, how long is that? How long of a period are we talking about? So that was just one of my concerns. So I'm glad to know that we're going to have way more time to work on this. Yes, that's great.
So an action plan is gonna be multi-year kind of overarching project list opposed to an annual work plan. It's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's a great, I'm sorry, I'm coming back up again, just.
Yes, Peter.
Again, Peter Gutowski, Community Development Director. I think you actually, I think, bridge the two documents. I think it'll be incumbent for us as a department to have that, that list of projects that were put on an action plan, when, I mean, it's quite often, semi-annually, Will Grove, the planning manager, will engage the board about emerging capacity. We could revisit the work plan and then also have the action plan as a document for reference. And that would just follow suit as we develop and ultimately get the board adoption of the work plan. So to me, that's the way to honor that action plan, because there's going to be a lot of, I think, important topics and potential projects and policy discussions that will likely come redirected to it and can be redirected back into our work plan as resources become available, or as you begin prioritizing what you want the planning division to undertake, in subsequent fiscal years.
And the action plan was recommended by our consultant. Other jurisdictions have done this as well, and it's to avoid losing momentum following the comprehensive plan process. So many excellent ideas have come forward from technical experts, from our agency partners, from community members. So it's a chance to, again, kind of map out at 1 to 10 year increments what we want to prioritize for code work or programs to explore. So it's helpful to keep that kind of fresh on all of our minds.
So one other thought, there'll probably be some sections that'll have like comments from 3 different people, or, 3 different inputs on one of the policies or one paragraph or something. How, is there a proposal to keep that organized? Because I've already got some down at my desk and it's getting thick because there's different versions of it.
I think that's an excellent point, Commissioner. What we encourage the Planning Commission to avoid during their deliberations process is what we call the battle of the red lines. So in public comments, there are many red line comments, I would say, that alter the same section of text, different sections of the same text. So I think it would be very easy to get lost in that process. I think instead we could capture in our presentation to you kind of the core of what those edits are seeking to accomplish. And from a variety of the different letters, and then could work with the board on kind of preferred language. But I'm not sure if Will or Peter wanted to add.
Yeah.
There's Will.
And get everybody up. Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners, your planning manager, Will Groves. Nicole and I were discussing about this today, and one of the things the planning commission struggled with was, some of these topics that come up has really diverse opinions from the public about how to approach it, or even what the underlying important points were. And so one of the ways that the planning commission got themselves sort of through the process was to teach the story. So, it might be, we were thinking about forest health, and certainly there's people who feel very strongly that forest management is a key aspect of forest health. Other people know changes in precipitation over time or other activities. And so one of the ways to potentially avoid trying to redline everything is to acknowledge that there was a large engagement process. Members of the public expressed interest in the following topics, and now therefore we have policies and goals that come out of that. So not to presuppose particularly that topic or anyone, but just noting that it may be a way out to tell the story of what was interesting to people, rather than try to adjudicate some things that people have very strong feelings about, and the underlying facts, which I think is important.
And so then it'll be up to us to really understand kind of those discussions and the input that it is on the record. So we're prepared for getting it landed. I can see that. Okay.
And I think Nicole and Will have did a phenomenal job with the planning commission. They're inevitably, we live in a dynamic county, and no one finds themselves by accident in Deschutes County. People are connected to this place, have different viewpoints, different values. And these contentious issues, with Will and Nicole's facilitation, the engagement of the planning commission, try to break out what the issues were, and then instead of giving some kind of giving the planning commission some kind of binary choice, you must do either A or B. It was more, think about convening stakeholders, think about engaging engaging a technical advisory committee to inform ultimately the board on these very difficult, complicated topics. So rather than getting into this picking winners and losers as one might characterize that tension, it was more the understanding the importance that these are difficult topics that require input from a number of experts and community members that can then lead to informed perspectives that may lead to policy discussions. But both of them, and credit to again to the Planning Commission for recognizing the ability to mold that in a way that captured kind of the spirit and the essence of the comprehensive plan, which is to provide this kind of guidance as opposed to like this hard, decisive checkpoint. Not that the comp plan can't do that, but that was a way of, I think, again, recognizing diverse opinions in our community.
Right.
Okay,
I think this approach makes sense. It's 4 parts with the focus on the chapters and a dedicated meeting. I am a little concerned about trying to participate virtually on July 10th, but it's chapters each that are substantial.
Well, I will, thank you for the feedback, and I will coordinate with Brenda just to make sure again that there's adequate time on these specific agendas to allocate to this item. And I think, if appropriate, we could also explore, July 17th, July 24th, so that you wouldn't have to participate virtually. If that would be preferred. Well, I will work on that, and then we'll see you, to begin the diving into deliberations at the end of this month. So thank you very much, Commissioners.
thank you very much, Nicole. Thank you for shutting the door earlier. I appreciated that. All right, so now we go to RVs as a rental dwelling. Item number 3.
Thank you, Chair. Again, Will Groves, your planning manager. So I have for you today a deliberative work session. So again, we're under the rubric of deliberations in case we need to get into some detail. But the purpose of this meeting is to orient the board to the record, talk you through kind of what was important in that record, and then receive some feedback about a regulatory approach. We're going to use the information that we got from you today to help us decide what to bring before you in terms of regulation opportunities. I've got a hand gesture I've been making for this. If you think about regulations from very permissive, relatively easy to adhere to, and then you think of ones that are more robust, so there's a lot of requirements. We weren't sure at the outset if you would like to see, options A, B, and C, or if you want to see options A, B, and C kind of tightly clustered around more restrictive regulation on topics. So I'm going to walk you through some of the concerns that came up in the record, some of the opportunities and challenges, and then see if you have any feedback preliminarily for us about, broadly, you're looking to make this relatively permissive so that people can take advantage of it, or where you might have concerns and think that more regulatory structure might be appropriate as we bring more formal deliberations to you. So what we got in the record, the memo goes into this in some depth. I'm filling in for Tommy Salzman today. I'm going to go over the memo at a relatively high level, but if you want to zoom in, stop me, or we can get to that at the end. So of course, a public hearing was held before the board on May 8th of this year, and the written record closed on May 29th. We received 60 comments. Some individuals provided more than one comment, and we had 6 individuals appear verbally at the hearing. There's testimony in support of this application. It provides additional housing options, financial opportunities for property owners. It gives opportunities for those living illegally in RVs currently to live legally. And there were a variety of other comments from supporters that are included in the memo. There was also opposition. There were concerns about enforcement, the adverse effects on property values or rural character and community, as well as wildfire issues, as well as legal complications that might come from landlord-tenant law. And in the memo is also a list of other concerns that came out that were expressed less often. I want to really give a highlight to some of the information we got from some of our agency partners. Fire districts had responded, with concerns about this particular, amendment. They would like to see, requirements relating to fire access to the driveway that gets you there, spacing between the RV and other structures, assigning addresses, as well as a number of other concerns that are outlined in the memo. You had asked at the public hearing for some feedback from code enforcement regarding its capacity to enforce existing and future code amendment cases, especially related to RV dwellings. There's a memo from CDD code enforcement to the board dated May 29th in the record. Code enforcement noted that their caseload is high and increasing, and that of the current violation cases relating to RVs 78, 47% of those properties, at least under the current regulatory scheme, might be eligible. So of the people currently in code enforcement for RV violations, about half of those properties under the current rules might be able to get an approval, but it's important to note that septic requirements would be a major hurdle. Septic systems typically are $30,000 plus problems. Investigating and providing violations of these proposed amendments could be very time consuming. This is unusual in that we have kind of a multi-tier structure of people that we're dealing with. So normally if there's a violation on the property, you could drive by and take a look at it. In this situation, one of the proposed requirements is that the RV has an operable toilet. And so in order to, if you were to need to check that, for example, you can't see it in a drive-by. You know, you can't, if you got the landlord's permission, there's then getting the tenant's permission to see that. And there were some concerns about landlord-tenant law. So this presents an unusually complicated scenario for code enforcement in that there's multiple people who have different protective rights in terms of observing and trying to rectify violations. Some of the ones that were concerning is that, you know, the current rules require the single family dwelling to be the owner's primary residence. It'd be relatively difficult to determine. Confirming if the RV is owned or leased by the tenant, determining that the essential sewer services like sewer, water, and power are provided, as well as inspecting the RV for operable facilities like toilets and sinks. The on-site wastewater division, Todd Cleveland, also commented there seemed to be some debate in the record about what was required of these facilities, these RVs, particularly in relation to medical hardship dwellings. And Todd Cleveland notes that there's an important difference between these RVs, which is this is a permanent opportunity. So someone could live in here for the next 50 years if the board grants that. And because of that, some special provisions that are used for medical hardships, which, you know, are a temporary nature and extinguish with the person leaving the property, that these would need, under DEQ rules, need permanent sewer or septic connections. And so there was that he had brought up. Also noting that that he had concerns about groundwater, about flows to protect groundwater resources. There's a 1 acre minimum currently proposed in the amendments, and those that was designed to match the concerns with our aquifers, noting that flows are capped at 450 gallons a day. And that would include that, which covers the primary residence. So if you add an RV to that on smaller properties, it's very hard to serve those. It would lead a lot of people into a corridor where they would, you know, find themselves getting expensive denials if that was included as an option. Larger lot sizes make it easier to serve septic. And then both the on-site wastewater division and building safety were concerned that these RVs should have, if they're permanent dwellings, they should have the facilities that typically accompany permanent dwellings, such as living, sleeping, heating, cooking, sanitation facilities comparable to a typical dwelling unit, including sinks, toilets, showers, proper sewage connection. There's also a comment from the Oregon Water Wonderland Unit 2 Sanitary District, and they were concerned about the both the ability of these RVs to hook up to their pressure system, as well as the capacity that they have in association with this. So I've highlighted some of the discussion to date. And what we're looking for you again today is just some general feedback about the regulatory approach that you might be interested in us being prepared for. And this could be pretty general, you know, but I would anticipate you might say, look, this is an important opportunity for the county. Let's explore what a careful yes might look like, or I'm really concerned about neighbors or groundwater. I'd like to see robust protections in those areas among the options that are teed up for the board in a subsequent deliberation. So that's kind of the regulatory approach. Again, There's some options about how we might approach this. You'll see there's discussions about rural character and how setbacks can help deal with some of that neighbor impacts, and about how both setbacks, clustering, visual screening, limitation on, for example, burn barrels, on-site incineration of waste, can deal with some of those neighbor issues. With regard to code enforcement, again, that memo provided by our code enforcement department notes that for any regulation that we put in place, if we're going to meaningfully enforce it, they'd like to have some opportunity to give you some feedback about those. Some of them can be, you're trying to solve a particular problem by putting a rule in place, and then it may be very difficult, time-consuming, expensive to enforce. There was a discussion about wildfire management, and in particular, there was a concern about the fact that these add residences to the rural community, but don't capture additional fees for those service districts. We preliminarily explored what it might look like to have something like an SDC associated with this that might distribute funds to service providing districts. So if that's something you're interested in, we could dive deeper and provide some structure associated with that. And there were other, other departments that are similarly impacted, for example, roads. You're adding drivers and traffic to the rural community. Should SDCs be assigned to be similar to ADUs or some other approach? So that's a real high-level overview. I'm definitely available to dig into particular topics you might be interested in, but really hoping to get some feedback about the general approach you'd like to see to as we bring back future deliberations and the structure of regulatory framework that you'd like to see.
So I find it fascinating that perhaps almost 50% of the code enforcements with this issue, if we did something, might be okay.
They
What?
would need to make the investment.
Right,
to do it.
exactly. They'd have to spend a lot of money.
Yeah. I'm sure Angie's on her way. The code enforcement is complicated. I think it's fair to say that, again, Peter Kutowski, Community Development Director, I think to the extent that the board is interested in exploring this as another tool to address housing, our housing challenges, that there are tremendous arguments that support that approach. Whether or not this program will ameliorate code enforcement as it pertains to those that are living in RVs illegally, I'm not sure it's going to be a panacea. Some might explore it. I mean, you're talking about, you still have to do a pedestal for your electrical hookups. You still have to, get a site evaluation or alteration permit for your septic system. So there's still several thousand dollars have to go into ensuring, not to mention a few $100s might be for a land use permit to allow that investment to occur. Our experience with code enforcement is the people that are choosing to live in RVs illegally are likely going to continue to do so until such time as we get a code enforcement complaint, we pursue it. So that's the point I wanted to underscore. It's not, I just don't see it relieving that reality that we see in the rural county in the shadows and in larger tracts that are heavily landscaped. Again, there's plenty of justifications to do this program. I'm not seeing it as going to miraculously clear our code enforcement volume, and it's not a priority. That's the other piece. We're dealing with solid waste and eminent public health and safety issues. We have a very small team, a team that we're training as we speak, and it takes time to process those high priority cases, as well as some of the fundamentals that Will highlighted that are noted in the memo. We will enforce illegal RVs. We will enforce if the board decides to allow this program to occur and someone has an entitlement and they're not fulfilling their requirements, we will enforce that. It's just that the memo communicates that it will take some time. We're talking about certified letters to coordinate with the property owner and to coordinate with legal counsel to ensure that we have access to the RV, and all of that will will take time, and as long as the board understands those realities, that's what I'm trying to underscore, is just making sure that you're informed with the input factors.
I mean, Peter, I would actually say, I would talk about the relationship between these RV dwellings and code enforcement, almost inverted from the way you described it. It's not, can we do RV dwelling tenancy to relieve code compliance, our code compliance burden? I would say that unless we can demonstrate to people that we can effectively enforce code, the community's not going to accept these RV dwellings. The large number of illegal, RV dwellings out there that, aren't being addressed through code enforcement. That's one of the major reasons why people are so upset about the possibility of actually sanctioning this, because they just picture more of that.
More illegals. Yes. definitely.
And so that leads us back to, well, why does code enforcement have the capacity to address these things? And those are, you've heard me speak many times about my concerns about us not providing enough resources for code enforcement to have the capacity to do its job. And that's not something that's solved by, text amendments or comments related to RV dwellings. So for me, at the highest level, I think that this is actually a very important opportunity to provide needed housing in our community. But in order to be able to do this, we do need better, we need to expand our code enforcement capacity, or at least expand a specific kind of slice of our code enforcement capacity to related to these issues, RV dwelling related issues. Where I'm at. On this.
And these are the exact conversations we want the board to be grappling with. This is a different code amendment than rural ADUs or, other economic development opportunities that we've had in the past.
Well,
This has a lot of nuances. There's a lot of eligible property that potentially could utilize it. We're one of two counties, I think, that are in the position of adopting it. I think Tillamook County may have just adopted, I can't remember, maybe it's Clackamas County, excuse me, I think Clackamas County has just adopted it, and actually one of their legislative representatives was the sponsor of Senate Bill 1013. So we don't have a lot of perspective or context. And turning it, kind of getting the board to provide some direction for Will's team and ultimately for Tanya, there is this, to the extent that the board is interested in this text amendment, I'll just reframe it, get out of your way, Will, but to the extent that you're interested in this opportunity, it will be helpful for staff to know what your thoughts are on those regulatory elements, the framework that you would like to discuss more thoroughly in deliberations, because we can come back and build a matrix that allows you to go through those requisite elements. Because it's kind of the Goldilocks scenario. We want to this conversation will help us, again, if this is something that you're supportive of, to figure out how to build that perfect temperature of porridge in a matrix as you grapple with, how strong or how permissive you might want this program to be.
The fact that it's gonna cost $30,000 to put in a septic system, I would think at the minimum.
Pretty typical.
Yeah,
Rarely, some systems may be appropriately sized to receive the additional flow.
I doubt it. Come on, I had a house in Lapine that built under what their specs were, and yet they were told in order to do an ADU, they had to spend another $45,000.
I mean, most households are not they're not thinking for that extra bedroom. They're thinking about, how do I serve the plans in place to meet the you know, the baseline requirements. It's no different than a domestic well. They drop the well when it starts producing at a sustainable rate, not thinking about, oh, if I go a little bit deeper, that could buy me some, more time, more longevity as demands of the aquifer, increase. So, you know, those are some of just the realities that existing homeowners or property owners experience.
So
And we did, I mean, we're aware that there are those septic constraints, but we still pursued a rural ADU policy to make that housing opportunity available to our community. I mean, this is,
Exactly.
you know, just saying like, oh, well, nobody's gonna have the septic capacity, so let's not buy. I wouldn't say that we should say, nobody's gonna have the septic capacity, so let's not bother pursuing this
Well, yeah.
RV dwelling.
And your point's well taken. If you've seen Sherry Penner's monthly recap of May, there's significant interest in RVs as expressed through site evaluations, through pre-applications, through land use approvals, and through building permits. So
There's significant interest in ADU.
in rural ADUs, yeah.
Yes, you said
Oh,
RVs.
did I? Sorry.
But those are-
I
Those
know.
are like the,
Sorry.
it's a permanent structure though. It adds, you know, value to your property.
That's true.
Whereas this, it might cost you $30,000, but the RV is definitely not something that's gonna add a lot of value.
Which is what the rural fire protection district's concerns were, is even with those investments, the coordination that Tanya's done with the assessor, it's unlikely that it's gonna increase the real market value of the property, which right, has implications for a taxing district that is responsible for serving our rural residences. So, yeah.
You can
it is
actually
definitely-
decrease it. I mean, think about it. It's one thing to have a really nice ADU that matches your house. It's right on your property, but to have an RV pad and they'll go like, well, what's that? You know, what's that being used for? I mean, and you just put $30,000 in the ground for the septic system. So it's a different game.
Yeah, it is a different animal in a lot of ways because this presents the opportunity to just split the costs with the tenant. A tenant comes with their own RV, you've invested in the pedestal and all of the utilities associated with it, and that's it. And you're not spending $200,000 to build a rural ADU. You know, it's a different kind of opportunity, and then we do know that there are a lot of housing insecure people in our community who, you know, presented with the prospect of being near homelessness, their go-to is to go buy an RV. So it's hard to predict how this will all play out, but I think that there's a real opportunity.
So, I agree that I haven't seen a collapsed RV from snow load, so we were talking about the Ramada. And that would be a nice to have, and when I think of Ramada, I think of, man, that's gonna sure extend the life of that RV, but that's not the domain we're in here, so just letting you know, I was real kind of ready to go on that before, but I don't know that I'm gonna make it, I'm not gonna support it as a hard requirement going. Water, when we were doing accessory dwelling units and now RVs, these are not public water systems under testing requirements of public water systems. It's just another connection to a domestic well. Is that how that works?
That's our understanding, yes.
With the one caveat, if I may, with Avion, I think is on record, respectfully asking, there's been some testimony, rejecting that approach, but to have they want to have will serve letters to ensure that public water providers have the capacity to extend that service to basically a second unit.
I'm just thinking that the water system on single, exempt well, it doesn't step into a public water system by doing it.
That's my understanding, but we'll double check that.
In the proposed.
No more than a rural ADU would, right?
Yeah, exactly. It didn't come up that way.
That's right.
a permitted frost protected water supply? Is there such thing as a permitted frost protected water supply?
Yeah, so, you think about plumbing permits and there's special construction you can engage in to bring water. Certainly you can imagine if somebody brought sort of informal water shallowly buried and that pipe froze, then this place becomes therapy because deeply unsuitable to live in the winter months. And so depth of burying it to a certain depth is my understanding. Some of the material construction can increase the cost of the construction, but ensures continued water availability.
So there is a permitted process for that supply. How is that?
Exactly. You can imagine anytime you're taking drinking water from point A to point B, you've got permits from CDD that are involved in that.
Well, I bought a property many years ago and it's always interesting when you look for where are the utilities and how do we get there? So I don't know that, the connection to the house is permitted, but there's some pretty wild stuff under the ground out there too.
I mean, would there be a permitting process? Would the permitting process for the hookup pedestal kind of encompass all of this, or would there be separate permits?
That's the concept, is that you would have just as you have in an RV park that somebody could pull up any day and they would expect this, be able to plug into sewer, water, and electric, that would be a pedestal that would provide that at the time of initial permitting of the site. And then, we've explored the notion of having some sort of subsequent regulatory step, which is because there are requirements for both the site and the state statutory requirements, as well as requirements for the RV. And so it seems like we're going to need a two-phase process where you get a permit for the pedestal, and then as a particular user comes into that pedestal, some process to validate that the RV comes with the necessary facilities to be used at that site.
And I think that's explicitly written in Senate Bill 1015. That just as you have to have a point of discharge for your wastewater, there has to be a demonstration that you're hooked up to domestic well.
I do support system development charge of some sort for transportation, probably that half of SDC like we talked about for ADU. And then also having that discussion in a serious manner for fire districts. I don't know what our options are. It sounds like research it a little bit. If there's an annual assessment, or I don't know. It's awkward to think, oh, we're piling on, but it seems to be appropriate too.
Yeah, I think what Tanya was conceptualizing is if the board was interested in having staff engage the rural fire protection districts in these eligible zones, that their staff could engage their board to determine if they want to charge a special fee, almost like their own system development charge, that then if they.
But it wouldn't be, it'd be a reoccurring.
It'd be an annual,
Yeah.
right? Not a.
I guess, I don't think we really thought it through, but what's acknowledged in the memo is that we would be the pass-through, that whatever maybe you're right, that there's an annual fee to cover the cost of the rural fire protection districts to serve that RV as a rental dwelling. We have a system in place where we can, collect those fees. Admittedly, an annual fee, as I would, Andy having a good showing up code enforcement, an annual fee ensuring they're paying is, or puts us in a reactionary position, as opposed to why I was maybe incorrectly thinking a one-time fee that they pay up front, which we collect before the issuance of the building permit for the pedestal.
Well, maybe that's
But that's something that that's a
Definitely
conversation
the
that
way to
the
do it,
districts need to have, and.
Well, the interesting thing is when you start adding up all these actual costs,
Right.
real costs, then the affordableness
Yeah,
of the
so I-
project it's just going up
Yeah.
like this, honestly.
entry to entry.
But that's really what you're dealing with, even though we're trying to do something to help people that don't have a lot of money and really want to stay in the county. And yet when you're real and you actually look at things, it's not cheap.
And
You can't live for free.
And that's, I see
Or some people are
especially
living
the
for
community
free.
development department, we administer local and state and sometimes federal requirements for new development, and it is the cost of ensuring that public life and safety and public health are established and maintained. You're right, that there is a cost, and it goes back to how much you want to kind of scale these potential amendments with being mindful of what those implications can represent to property owners and potential tenants.
Sure, Darren, I really want to acknowledge that this is specifically what this meeting was about, is that just to what you said, that this is a tremendous opportunity for people who are already financially strapped.
Right.
And that to both make sure that it's safe and healthy and to contain some of the impacts of it starts to get very expensive. You know, we haven't gone there previously, but you could imagine having some sort of annual renewal that would capture fees that are code enforcement to deal with this compliance issue specifically. But again, that then increases the cost of establishing it initially. So that balance is going to be a tricky one from our perspective, is a tricky one to strike. And we're here to support you as you explore that.
I like the idea of one-time SDC type fee for fire districts and not a recurring. I'm just thinking it through as we're talking about it, because, oh man, how do you keep track of that over time? And you know, the next year somebody gets a bill and who's doing this and why are we getting this bill? And then it's there isn't a renter there. Who's gonna, you know, so it gets really complicated.
Yeah,
So I mean, it's for
But
discussion.
then other people are gonna
I
be
mean, but-
paying it.
But if the fire district wants out of that one-time STC type payment enough to cover multiple years of operations, and that's gonna be a really big,
Oh, yeah.
like, that would be a big barrier to entry as opposed to, you know, a little bit of money each year to kind of.
But then the county's gonna be in the spot where we're gonna have to be the middleman in that transaction, and that's a disaster.
It seemed like there would be ways to, didn't the staff memo describe ways to kind of tie it into the property tax, the property tax system?
We've talked to the assessor preliminarily about that, and it seems like, so really the feedback I need is that you're interested in the details here, and we will dig in, and we'll talk to the assessor, look at, you know, what sort of taxing-like effects might be possible for this, and we'll bring back that information.
I just think that it's gonna come out that it's not gonna be really any more reasonable than.
I think the other piece, just logistically, we have several rural fire protection districts. These boards likely don't speak with one voice. And you're looking for a consensus on an approach to cover their costs for RVs as a rental dwelling. And so we're happy to have Tanya do that level of coordination, but it may take her in engagement with the rural fire protection districts, you know, several weeks to get back to us. So we just want to let you know that that coordination issue, because it's.
And it
it's
is,
not
they
gonna
are
be-
busy right now too. Don't forget, they have,
This is the
yeah,
summer.
yeah.
But
I mean, I can certainly imagine that every single fire district might come up with a different idea of how to do this, but there's also just kind of, people need to just accept that, a reasonable approach. And I was just thinking about somebody wants to put an addition on their house to accommodate 2 more people, another bedroom, another big bedroom. They get, a fire district would get property taxes out of that, additional property taxes. How much, right? Like, is that, a good rule of thumb, or is there something very special about an RV that's much higher fire risk, or you need to consider something different? But there's gotta be some kind of reasonable, probably multiple kinds of reasonable approaches to this that might not make everyone happy, but address the fiscal concern for the fire districts.
one,
Because, if we said, yeah, we're gonna pass this no matter what, you can either get something out of it or not. I'm pretty sure that all the fire districts would say, yeah, we wanna get something out of it.
there is a scenario here, and Stephanie, I'm looking at you for just your thoughts on the fly, but as this information is collected and as the rural fire protection districts presumably provide their feedback, their preferred approach, I can see a scenario where it might be beneficial to reopen the hearing to allow the rural fire protection districts to share their thoughts and perspectives. This has not been, this level of detail has, I think we planted the seeds. We were hoping that, we would get this level of engagement from the rural fire protection district at the first evidentiary hearing. But if the board is interested in having staff start this conversation, and if it matures, and as the board starts its deliberative process on this and other issues, there might be a scenario where the public would stand to benefit from, to hear from them specifically, and who's to say maybe on where the board is heading on these RV amendments, but that's a conversation that procedurally and just from a community standpoint, would be helpful, for eligible property owners to realize, what's being contemplated.
Well, this is legislative too, so pretty wide margins to be able to work with here.
And also I think, another perspective is that these users are already out there, right? And there's no fees being captured. And to the extent that robust regulations being put in place with regard to driveways, defensible space, fire clearing, that while not directly capturing dollars from the fire department, that this could potentially provide a big advantage for them, and they may or may not want to go through the difficulty of trying to figure out how to provide a trickle stream of money in association with it, and they might be happy with a robust package of, that comes with enforcement issues or defensible space, but then now we're enforcing that. The driveway, it's an all-weather surface, those driveways start to get expensive.
Yes.
So, but that's a way that we could potentially reduce risk and cost to the fire departments without providing them a trickle stream of funds annually.
And I do want to mention that according to Business to Oregon, the apartment rental vacancy in Bend is at 11%, with more apartments being ready to be dropped in. So I've just been trying to tell people, please go back to your landlord. If you are a renter that's a good renter, go back and renegotiate. So there are a lot of vacancies in the city. Redmond is, I believe, not in that same situation, but they do have a lot of apartments coming in to Redmond too. So our rents are way too high. But when you start analyzing these costs, and if you look at that 30,000 over 36 months without interest is $833 a month. So, and that's no interest. So it's definitely, to do something is way more expensive than you want we know there's this tremendous need for our community. And then you hear the other side of the story in Oregon, where somebody has a renter and they've been there for 2 years and they have not paid a dime. And you would hope that the state would realize that that's not right. So that makes it hard for all landlords to not want to take a risk.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is important to think about, this is not a, federally recognized form of affordable housing. So, HUD isn't gonna come and shower money on property owners who want to create these kinds of hookups. But I could imagine, conceivably the state, conceivably, some of these, innovative programs like this. I forget what the program was called that is trying to set up house shares. There's an organization that's trying to set up house shares.
Yeah, home sharing.
Home share, yeah. They're literally matching, matchmaking people to, you've got a home with a little bit of empty space. You are a person who needs a place to live. We're going to connect you to. You can imagine, an organization like that branching out a little bit and maybe lending homeowners a little bit of money at low interest rates so that they can accommodate another resident on their property. I mean, creating the structure around this, I think, is a way to actually invite investment, philanthropic or public investment into producing more housing units in this way.
But, you know, if there's no legal way to do it, then nobody's gonna give you any money.
So another policy topic is, setbacks, there was one note here, increased required setbacks, it rendering some properties ineligible depending on lot dimensions. I do want to be sensitive to that, because, just parking that RV right next to the house that's next to the lot line, which is next to the neighbor's driveway, could be that awkward spot. So I'm just, whatever that looks like, will take a little time.
You're sensitive to ensure that the RV is placed in an appropriate location, so it's not seen as a
Just a little bit of.
blight to the neighbor.
Nice shower.
Just that
Reducing the
scenario where-
economic value of the neighbor's properties.
Just wanted to clarify.
So just one of those topics. So, Commissioner Dare, I mean, you were making statements like, this is gonna get expensive to come in up front. Are you still part of a proceeding?
Well, I mean, we need to look at the cost.
Beginning of deliberation.
Right, I do believe we need to look at the cost, because once you get, when we talk to the fire departments and we actually do the cost, and can you actually get a septic system for 30,000? I might find that hard to believe in today's world, so I just think it's a good, and then you're gonna go, okay, well, actually, who's gonna really do this? Because they're gonna really be out like $60,000 to do something good that we know we need affordable housing.
And I would just offer, and we're greatly appreciative for the board's willingness to consider these issues and some of the imperfections. Deschutes County typically finds itself at the front end of the sphere.
On the sphere, Peter, on the sphere.
On the sphere, okay. And this is just,
Typical.
Deschutes County is a leader in taking advantage of new legislation to deal with economic development, quality of life, livability related opportunities. This is such a complicated topic that you may find, again, as you collect this information and have more reflection, you may want to see how other counties or a county in particular, like Clackamas, is implementing it and administering it. What are the lessons learned? What is their program? And we talked, the previous agenda item was an action plan. We just to the extent the board finds itself in trepidation, doesn't mean that this issue can't come back with more perspective and reflection. I'm not trying to put the hand on the scale to direct the board where to go, but this is such a unique amendment that we don't have anything to compare it to. And the cost, the various standards that can apply, how it affects other taxing districts, its compatibility with the rural environment, how do you insulate it and to the best degree possible from the threat of wildfire. I mean, there's a lot of elements here. So thank you for letting us have this conversation.
Well, I do support, view reduction, defensible space, even if it's just kind of that one time opening up. So maybe there's a defensible space little hook in there somewhere, because if this is a rural property, this may be a good opportunity to say, okay, open it up, because that's what we need to see a little bit. Two other things is owner living in primary residence. Did you say, is that a requirement? Is that state law? So owner living in primary residence, state law. Just want to make sure that was kind of black and white on that. And then also I did talk to Commissioner Savas from Clackamas a couple months ago, and his impression was we're way ahead of them, as in they were working on it, but I mean, I don't know what the status is.
They're adopted.
Okay, so yeah, he probably, right when I called him, he probably didn't understand how far they
It
were.
may not be in effect yet, but they adopted an ordinance that.
So I probably called him right before it kind of came back, and he didn't know what. I'd like to see that package if they, if you can email it to us.
And is that part of the record? I guess they can get it, they just can't rely on
Public information,
Right,
Yeah, right.
yeah,
So we
yeah.
just wanna-
I mean, I think that,
legislative process, I just want to see something.
but I mean, I think it's best if it's part of the record,
Oh,
I mean,
interesting.
I mean, there's probably.
there's a difference between quasi-judicial
Right.
and judicial.
I mean,
legislative.
we are talking about the development standards that are Clackamas County likely implemented.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, their ordinance isn't in the record, so if you
Yep.
would just
Yeah.
You want to make sure how you articulate the amendment so that the record is preserved. Or the integrity of the record is maintained.
I'm not here to compromise the process. I was just looking for more information.
No,
Right.
well said.
Does that mean we should reopen the record in order to bring that in? I mean, it sounds like we're talking about reopening a record in order to talk to.
I was just acknowledging that as that information is delivered back to the board, and there's a possibility that the board may find that they want to engage the districts directly and from a public relations standpoint, it may be helpful for the general public and the media to emphasize this evolution of the text amendments and potentially why a hearing is being reopened. Whether or not it needs to be, I think is to be determined. It's just getting you thinking about these issues of a record and detailed information from the fire districts, which is not part of the record as we, so the more I think about it and as I look out of the corner of my eye, it may be wise to reopen. But more than anything, it helps us to understand what is of interest and then we can figure out how to ensure the record is necessary.
Right. Yeah, I always like to go back to the basics too. Sorry, Stephanie Marshall, Senior Assistant Legal Counsel. Goal 2, public participation, I mean, we don't want to have the board saying, oh, we're going to continue to pull, but, everybody else, the record's closed. So just kind of keeping that in mind, there is a process and there is a way that, the record can be reopened and kind of allow the universe of what comes in on fire or, whatever the topic may be.
So, well, do we need any motions or anything then to?
No, it's just generally trying to get a general approach to come back and do it on. So what will happen is that we will coordinate, based on some of the questions, they will coordinate with the fire districts, with finance, look into some opportunities for about how we might collect some fees associated with this. Take a look at Clackamas's approach. Can talk to legal counsel. Maybe you'll probably see us next coming back to you, asking you if you want to reopen the record in order to receive more information. And then at a subsequent point, you would see deliberative materials built to identify, be responsive to some of the concerns that you raised today. So no further action from me today. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And then, of course, by me, down McKenzie Canyon, they don't have coverage. So nobody's gonna. And that's a dirt road.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to item number 4.
Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Eric Rapp, Deputy County Administrator. As a background, the Coordinated Homeless Response Office asked COIC to issue an RFQ. An RFQ was for possible temporary shelter sites. The process included a long list of publicly owned properties that nonprofits and others responding to the RFQ could point to for the possible development of some type of temporary shelter site. The RFQ was very, very broad in nature. This is coming back to the Board of Commissioners because it's the county ARPA funds that have been identified as some of the resources. Also, some of the proposals include county-owned sites. So really, for any proposal to move forward, the entity that is providing the funding and the entity that is providing the land would need to agree that the project should move forward. The RFQ was issued on March 12th. There were 7 submissions. The total 7 submissions, if you add up all those costs, it's about $4.5 million in both startup and 1 year of operating costs. The 7 submissions included 4 state parking proposals, 2 tiny home villages, and 1 managed camp. A group called the Intergovernmental Review Team, made up of staff from the cities of Bend and Redmond, COIC, and Deschutes County, reviewed the 7 proposals and lumped them into 3 different categories. Categories 1 or Tier 1 proposals were considered, recommended and shovel-ready. Tier 2 were categorized as recommended but need more information. And Tier 3 were categorized as not recommended to move forward at this time. And the "at this time" is a significant phrase, meaning that the proposal still may move forward, but it was not an immediate solution. There might have been some type of land use issue or some other thing that prevented that project from moving forward or starting immediately. But it certainly doesn't preclude an entity from moving forward with it. The intergovernmental review team put these into 7 categories, and those were shared with the Coordinated Homeless Response Office Board a few weeks ago. The CROW board endorsed staff's recommendations. And really, today is an introductory discussion with Board of County Commissioners about these proposals. Staff is seeking direction. It doesn't have to be today, but we wanted to start the conversation. I wanted to check with the board in terms of what would be most helpful. Would the board like me to walk through each proposal? There are 7 listed in the staff report. I could also go through the projects, and there's some discussion items contained within the staff report, but I wanted to check in to see what would be most helpful for the board.
Thank you, Eric. And then one thing you might want to add is that there is funding for the tiny homes through the state. So that wouldn't be coming out of our money. So that's good.
Yes, guys.
I think that's important for this group to know that.
Yes, the resources list out the county identified ARPA resources. In addition, the cities of Bend and Redmond have offered some investments on infrastructure and one-time capital funding. And then, as Commissioner Adair mentioned, the state of Oregon has identified up to $1.1 million for some shelter units that could be part of this mix as well. Also, the staff report mentions that
I think that has to be determined this month, does it not, by the end of this month, the end of June?
I'm not sure the timeline on those ones.
I'll look on my text.
Also, the staff report points out that the 45 acres of county-owned land southeast of Redmond that would be part of the solution for the DSL land swap. There were no proposals directly related to the 45 acres. The staff report outlines some possible actions staff could take if we want to move forward with trying to get proposals for the 45 acres.
I actually tomorrow have a meeting with Rick Russell and David Brand, and I believe we are going to be talking about that. I do believe that's a meeting tomorrow at 2. And then also on top of it, the level 3 for Juniper Ridge. I did have a meeting last week with Jessica Gamble and Chuck Hemingway about doing something small on that property, like maybe something small on, originally they said 10 acres, now they've determined 5 acres. They went out there the other day and they just thought if they could do something small in order to start helping those people and actually moving in a positive way. So
Sorry, on which property?
on Juniper,
Doing
know-
it at Juniper.
right, at Juniper, taking
On
5 acres.
county land or?
On the
city?
county land, within the 50 acres, they found a spot that they thought could be a positive location in order to seriously make a difference and help those people. And I believe we're now going to start citing people for the trash there. Is that what I saw? Which is another issue.
We're having conversations with the sheriff's office and our planning team. Start with human waste. Lots of moving parts.
Yes. So, but it's, we just had code 3 Sunday at China Hat, I believe. Another issue. So we've got lots of things going on.
But lots of moving parts.
Yes, they're all moving.
Let me,
If I could just say that, so I'm going to also talk to David Brand and Rick Russell. I can't remember what day it is, but maybe it's tomorrow. But I do not believe that is about the 45 acres. I believe that's about the remainder of the 12 acres.
So, from where I sit, we still do not have a proposal for the 45 acres. And, to my mind, that also means that we don't have a large scale proposal. While we still have this 1.5 or $1.8 million in hand to do anything about expediting the land exchange in East Redmond. So, that's a concern for me. Also, I would love to see, while we have this $1.8 million in hand, that we do something that, has a significant impact in North Juniper Ridge. And all of these projects that are recommended forward, I think are great projects. And I really would like to see them move forward. I just want to express my concern that if these $1.8 million of ARPA money are kind of all that we have left at the county to do something significant or strategic, that those two needs, clearing out the 137 acres in Redmond, kind of taking our 50 acres at North Juniper Ridge out of this kind of like in-between state. Those to me seem like the things that we absolutely need to be addressing with these funds, and the projects that are put forward will be helpful in small increments, but they're not necessarily the managed care that I think that we need to move large numbers of people around.
Well, honestly, right now, last year, we had 132 people a night at the Navigation Center, and we didn't have enough social workers. You can't help people move on if you're not actually surrounding them. And a lot of studies have come out now that smaller actually is better. If you're successful, look at how small our Veterans Village was initially, 15 cabins, and now we're going to be up to 22. But it's been incredibly successful, and those people have stayed in their housing that they've moved on to. So I think really the fact that we don't have any large managed camps, that's one issue, but we want to be successful. And I'm happy with a couple of these developments. So I think that we are making a difference.
I also think that we're making a difference. I think it shows in the point in time count numbers in the Redmond area and in the Bend area. But tiny house villages are extremely successful, extremely important, and extremely expensive per unit. And if we're going to come up with some options for large numbers of people, we need to do the thing that is more cost effective per space, essentially, and that is to develop a managed camp somewhere.
Oh, this is my response from Rick. So can we work on the 45 acres discussion tomorrow? Sure. I've had some conversations with Eric Robb. So that's what Rick just said to me. Because I have been talking to him about the 45 and what Rick can do with his program. So that's what he just
So
said.
at today's discussion, we also could expect that we may have a long list of questions to answer for the board. So rather than making decisions today, we're also happy to listen to board's questions and meet with the, for example, on the 45 acres, one possible scenario is to meet further with the city of Redmond staff, talk about possibilities. We could meet with nonprofits to ask about the 45 acres and why wasn't there a proposal? What concerns do they have? What could they see happen there? So staff is fully prepared to take back a list of homework from this work session.
And, with Jessica and Chuck, I think that they're a team that realizes they need to start small. They have great ideas, and I'm just really happy that the fact they were categorized tier 3 they just looked at that and said, okay, what is it we can really do then to get the trust and the commitment and the support of the group. So, you know, there are some good things. I did hear today that LA County, in fact, was spending 600,000 unit in a 7-story building for homeless. Now that it was incredibly not cost effective, and was it going to do anything to their numbers? No. So I feel like we're actually we're doing something here with these numbers. And the fact that you know, Mountain View, Rick's part of the discussion. We've got some great people, and that state money. My text didn't say that it was the end of the month, but it did. I was told that if we don't use it, they'll have to send it back. And there is a new program in Portland that I was just made aware of with like pods, but they're little more than pods. They're more expensive. I think they might have been like 25,000. They actually are built by homeless people, giving them a job. They're built and they offer more than just those teeny little pods that we've done at Oasis Village. And it might be, I would really hope design wise that the Oasis Village expansion could be done on a more aesthetically. Have you driven by it, Rick?
I was there for the groundbreaking, but I haven't seen that.
Okay, well, I had somebody drive by it. They said, gee, that must be a homeless camp, you know, a homeless. It needs to be, because it's right there on 126. It would really be lovely if they would build back into the property a little more, and then their fencing, it could look better than how it looks today. The Veterans Village, does it not look outstanding? They've done such a great job in the work they do. And today I had a conversation this morning early with JW. He was sure I was at the rodeo Saturday night. Anyway, he had said perhaps we could get together with JW, with their team that goes out to some of these areas. It might be a good time for us to meet with them again and see if we can work on things a little more as a joint group. So, you know, they're always there.
So, public safety is an issue here. So we're having, pretty bad situations, you know, stabbing, death, people shooting, you know, some of these unsanctioned camping areas are bad. And then there's a whole spectrum of issues, not all bad, but some bad things are happening. And also we're going to spend some of these dollars down, and these are one-time dollars, and then we're going to be done. We're still going to have this situation. We're not going to have any more resources. Nonprofits come to the table when there's resources, but they're not going to be able to fund themselves to go do this. We've got to get real serious and get careful here for action, leaning towards action in the next 6 months or a year, or it's just going to lose the whole thing for a lot longer. The culture of Central Oregon is the high desert. The winter is very dangerous. We're in the nice summertime now. But if we go around in a big circle again, everybody's being nice with each other. Well, let's just try to add some more capacity. It's going to get a little bit worse, a little bit more dangerous, and we're going to run out of money. So
No,
we have got to get serious about this.
we've got shooting up. No, I've been asking for more social workers at the Navigation Center. It was 48. No, it does matter. 48 hours for 132 people. One little over one employee. Our parole and probation is 1 to 40, 1 to 45. I said this months ago, and I've been talking with our health department. Well, now the city, remember when they asked for that analysis of the 750,000 social workers was one of the things. And I leave Amy messages routinely now saying, Amy, I surely hope you're going to bring more social workers, because that's really where the game is. We've had shooting up, people are shooting up drugs on the parkway. They're shooting up drugs next to the river. I just was in, where was it? Westlake Village. I didn't see one homeless place. The entire town didn't have one. That's in Ventura County. Didn't have one homeless person that I saw. Anyway, I'm just like, no, we've got to get more serious. And this is our opportunity. And I feel like social workers that are able to surround people. You can't have 132 people there overnight. That's just perpetuating the system. And I agree with you. This is our chance.
I would like us to. Is what they call it.
Happy to engage in those conversations both with the city of Redmond and service providers.
Can you do that this week?
Sure.
Because would you mind? I mean, we need to have something done now. We need to know what they'll commit to. We know the funding that they have through the MAC group, the 1.1 million. That's the pods at Oasis Village were $6,500. It would really honestly be nicer if they would maybe upgrade some of them. That was kind of what I think Rick Russell had said to me. Okay, you start here, but if you're following all the rules, maybe you can move to a bigger pod, something a little more pleasant to stay in. Anyway, and if we do have that state money,
So I'll add to the list. So far, I have explored the 45 acres both with city of Redmond staff and service providers. And then also discussed with Oasis Village, those state funds and pods the state has brought to the table.
okay, maybe they could look at the ones that are in Portland that are just a little bit, not that I want it to be too fancy, but I just feel like it could have a bit of an upgrade. I'm sure the people that are driving on 126 wonder. It is Deschutes County.
If the $1.1 million is if tiny houses are an eligible use of that grant, maybe you could check in with Central Oregon Villages about this project at 61071 Highway 97 South as well. If a tiny house at Oasis Village only costs $6,500, then you don't use $1.1 million on 10.
I'm not that crazy. That's the one I'm really not crazy about because that's a less wide property and they're not going to be happy. And South Bend,
Well-
that would be driving into Bend. That's like driving into
Yeah.
Redmond.
I'm not so part about that either. I mean, we're so proud of our land use system once again, but we are not gonna shoehorn a little tiny house village on that gravel lot right at the confluence, all of those high-speed roads. It is not appropriate.
It's kind of like when you're driving into Redmond from Pine Valley. If we could upgrade that property, that I just think visually it reminds me of a place where we could improve it.
So this set of recommendations was approved by the Crow Board.
To go on and get RFQs, yes. RFPs.
But neither of you want to see it further explored.
No, there's 3 of them on here that are fine, and the other 2 people are actually working on the ones that were level 3. They haven't stopped. They're actually trying to readjust, and other than the one in La Pine, I don't believe that's I don't think that's zoned allowable zoning in La Pine. So
So
the Juniper Ridge one is.
if this 61071 Highway 97 South project is not on county land, we're not discussing putting county money into it. Would you actively oppose using some of the state's $1.1 million on tiny homes in that site? If so, how do you want to express that into this process?
I was at the 4-H auction almost the whole day, and I heard Les Schwab buying animals of the 4-H kids the whole time. They're one of the businesses in our community that actually supports the kids. They were there all day long, and there weren't that many people that were there all day long. And so I can understand. I mean, it's the gateway to Bend. I feel like a tiny home village when you drive into Bend. Is that really what you want to see? I don't believe you do. And they know they are going to have incredible legal challenges from Les Schwab because Les Schwab doesn't want it. So it's like,
So, but on the
yeah.
coordinated homeless office for I mean, if it's on the list, and the city of Bend wants to approve it, the state's gonna pay for it. I don't support putting any county dollars in there, but
Yeah,
I mean, that puts you in that weird spot of the chair.
I'm caught in the middle, but that's okay. I'm only, one vote there.
One of five.
Right.
Okay. So we're not saying anything about, I was just asking if we're talking about how those $1.1 million are being deployed and tiny house villages are an eligible use, and those are the only things that are eligible on this list, then can we make sure that they're always exploited? Alongside looking into the 1.1 million and putting some of that 1.1 million into Oasis Village.
Right. I just think that they should upgrade what they were talking about doing, at 6,500. That seemed really,
I mean, another way to look at it is
More of
if
the
the city,
same.
if the city then is a property owner and they want to pursue working with the state of Oregon on using state funds, and the state is willing to, then it doesn't need county
Right.
support.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look at it.
Fine. Yeah. I hope that everyone is aware that these funds expire in a month or whatever.
No, actually, my text didn't say that. It just did say, I do remember that, if we don't use them, we'll have to send it back. So, but how to use them appropriately.
So I have two follow-up items that I hear at least two commissioners supporting. That's the exploration on the 45 acres and also a discussion with Oasis Village on the state pods, whether or not those could be used for their proposal.
Right. And,
There are items the board would like us to follow up on.
well, definitely the safe parking at Don's house. That's the second item here listed. Because it will re-engage that property, and there definitely is not enough safe parking in Bend. I've been told by Brooke that Westside Church is now actually talking. So, and they have a big parking lot, so, maybe they're going to be, following through with that.
Find us how many safe parking sites that might be discussed.
And that proposal, it was 6 safe parking sites and then. the
At Don's.
proposal, yeah, at the former, the location. It also talked about a structure being there and that being used as like some type of community center. And then the review committee had a few questions about, there's like another structure, and there's some unanswered questions that the review committee identified. But staff can go back to them to try to get a few more details about that proposal.
It was in pretty good shape.
Go back to the beginning, Oasis Village and Central Oregon Villages, the first tier 1 projects. Coming back to the Board of Commissioners, whose funding would be not today, and you're saying it's not. Because it's important to take action.
If the board wants to approve any of these, we'll take the next steps. I see, if the board sees any of these proposals and wants to move forward, then what staff would do is work on developing an ARPA agreement with those entities and flush out some of the details. So staff would be to take action if the board would like us to.
I mean, I'm not opposed to accepting those 2 tier 1 proposals.
I just want to say again, I think these are good projects. I want them to move forward, but we have these $1.8 million, our last $1.8 million of ARPA funds in our hand at this moment. And before we decide to deploy 700,000 of those $1.8 million to these 2 tier 1 projects.
Yeah, but we won't have to do the 700.
I want to know what can be done at the 45 acres.
But we don't have to use the 494,000 if they're going to get the tiny from the state. So that's 65,000 off of that. So it would bring it down a bit.
The good thing is these are pretty much shovel ready, and so I don't think it'll delay things much if we go back and get more information.
That's
So I mean, if it's just the landowner thumbs up on the Oasis Village, then, you know, I'm certainly ready to support that now. If we're talking about using any of the $1.8 million, I want to know, I would like to know what's possible on the 45 acres before we start chunking that $1.8 million up and spending.
So when we were at the budget committee meeting, I started talking about the 45 acres. You were saying that you like what Kat Zwicker was talking about. Could you expand on that a little bit? What your vision?
We were all there there at the joint city council meeting. Councilor Zwicker proposed, and there was a lot of nodding around the table from other city councilors. The idea that we were not going to get anything out of this RFQ process for the 45 acres. She predicted that accurately. And, you know, her explanation was that it would be much easier to have a developed site to offer to service providers than to ask them to both design, build, and operate something. So if City of Redmond staff you know, has a concept on that, you know, this is what it would take to do, you know, minimal amount of grading, graveling, you know, concentrated in this area to offer, you know, 30 sites, and then invite in service providers with a proposal for operation of that with case management, which I agree is important. I would like to see what that looks like before we let these $1.8 million go.
And we actually have funding too with with our funding for the Churro board. There's 800,000 left there. Not that I want to, it's just, it is there. So it's money that we're hopefully, and because we allocated 250,000 to keep running it for the next couple of years. That's actually over $1 million.
So you have a vision about what you might like to see out there, 30 sites graded, minimal investment.
I don't know about 30 sites. I just know that Councilor Zwicker predicted that we weren't going to get any responses back on the RFQ for an undeveloped site.
Well,
And she was right.
And I'm just saying that I had an unfinished, you know, proposal I was trying to verbalize, and you responded to me in a lot of energy saying that's wrong, we got to do this other thing. Nobody's got it worked out yet.
I didn't say that's wrong. I said there was no support for free for all.
Well, I'm not talking about that. I'm just referring to nobody's put it on paper yet anyways. I'm just saying, I'm very motivated for that. Let's put something on paper so we can say we like it or we don't like it.
Rick Russell has talked a lot about that 9 acres next to Oasis Village.
Oh, I know, yeah.
And so you can
$4
actually,
million plan about.
Right, I know.
Something out, yeah.
well, at least Rick had the idea to make it look good, which may be a little too expensive, but on the other hand, maybe we could make it look better than what it does now. But if you just transfer what he was thinking there over to, you know, it's all,
Then it'd just be a $40 million plan.
well, no, we won't make it 40.
Well, I don't know, I'm just trying to find common ground, the fact that there is support for putting something on paper out there.
Yeah,
And one thing on the 45 acres, in talking to some service providers, they may not be interested in providing some of the basic support.
And I don't understand this service provider thing. We're gonna find this magic service provider that we're gonna pay to fix some stuff. We've got to look out for
Well,
that. I'm not critiquing you, I'm just referring to
no,
everybody
Rick is,
saying, well, we're just gonna have the service providers pick up the slack.
no, we've
I
got
don't
to get it
understand what that
gravelled,
means.
we've got to get it cleaned up, and we've got to, okay, what is a, number of sites that actually make sense? Okay, so do we need 30 sites on the 45 acres? Do we make it only on like 20 of the acres? It's gonna be where, near 21st Street, that's supposed to be done by next
We
year?
need to ask people that are unsanctioned camping in a specific location to not be there. That's the
Right.
goal.
And they're gonna have to move
So
over
we
there.
keep going to, you know, how big is the spot gonna be, how nice are we gonna be, and who's gonna help them provide services? We've got to get a number of unsanctioned people off of another location.
Right,
So, as I say, we keep talking in circles on this.
I don't think we're talking.
I think we're moving ahead, but I get what you're saying.
I mean,
And
I
one
think
thing is the Redmond unsheltered code talks about, that there needs to be some types of services. So one idea of this is kind of bare minimum, but it would allow the county to remove people from the DSL land is the county put porta potties, drinking water, trash bins, and then there's an area for mobile case management. Nonprofits seem a little bit hesitant to take over the whole management of the camp, but if the county provided the basic hygiene services and there was a location for mobile case management, that might be a way to entice nonprofits to get involved. That would meet the city of Redmond code, and it would, the mobile case management is the intent is to get people out of homelessness.
And that's what I've been talking to Rick about this whole time. And I mean, remember, he had financial issues. Now he's having to replace somebody, but he has a great team. His safe parking program has been outstanding.
Well, and mobile case management, we have to watch out for that, because when I was out there last year, our health department goes out, our homeless outreach services team and some different folks, but they only do it on the terms that they're comfortable with, and I wouldn't want them to do more. But, so they go as far as they're comfortable with, and then they stop. And that's, I'm not critiquing that. And then, service providers, well, we don't want to go in the Junipers, it's scary over there. So it's like, we're undetermined in all aspects of this. We think we're doing stuff, but we're really only doing little bits at a time. So somehow we need to be able to just take a bigger picture look here.
We know
The reality
that,
of
we
it.
know that if you have authorized, established places for people to safely sleep at night, you can provide regular case management there. Safe parking has demonstrated that for us. And that's not some big fancy building. It's just, yeah, these 6 parking spots, they are here for people to safe park at night. And then, Mountain View Community Development or whoever's case manager knows where to find them.
Well, but we need to
Feels
acknowledge
safe,
we're gonna
feels
have
safe
40
going
people
there.
that we need to move, and we're gonna have 6 spots. I mean, fine, yeah, safe parking, not a problem. 6 at a time, but we have 40 people we need to move.
I'm not
So I don't
talking,
understand.
I'm not
how
talking
we're
about
Gonna
just,
get anywhere. if we
I'm not
keep
talking
providing
about we're
this.
setting up a 6-spot safe parking. I'm talking about safe parking demonstrates for us that if you have an authorized place that has a minimal amount of
I
development,
agree.
then you can have case managers, service providers regularly
Yeah.
contact those people and make progress with them. If you're trying to find them in an unauthorized location out in the junipers, yeah, your service provider is going to be scared to death of going out there. And they may not even find that person
Yeah.
anymore when they go out there. So the idea of a managed camp is that you are putting those things together. You have a place where people know they're allowed to be. There's a minimal amount of infrastructure. It's safe for service providers to go there, and they will. So you're
So-
saying like, oh, we're going around circles, like, no one is ever gonna go out there and serve those people. If we don't have a managed camp yet for you to see how it would work,
So the 14,000
but they
where,
exist in other parts of the state. And they work in other parts of the state.
we're talking about, we spend now, what is it, 14,000 a month? Is that right? Including security
Yeah.
at Juniper? Okay, so, and I would say security would be another thing that would be a cost. I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but maybe it's not on their code, but I would only do this for the county with,
Yeah, the model we have with security at Juniper Ridge, that piece is working well.
so we can transfer it to the 45, on a maybe not the whole 45. But that's where it needs to go. So
No,
we
we
can
were
get-
signing up for
you would
reoccurring
want to do a
costs.
concentrated development, because that's gonna cost less to develop, and it's gonna cost less for people to find the people that they need to make contact with. We don't need 45 acres, we need a little piece of 45 acres.
But these people have been on hundreds of acres, so,
Well, that's-
it's like a transition and, transitioning sometimes is harder for some people.
I mean, the Gales property, they're talking about they could host 40, 50 RVs on a little portion of 11 acres.
It's actually 8.8 or something, but yeah. I know,
Yeah.
their model is a bit different, but, anyway. Okay, so-
On Friday, Eric and I met with Linda Klein with the city of Redmond, their housing program analyst, Keith Witkowski, wasn't available, so we learned about the code. The city is highly motivated to move forward on the 45 acres. I hear, unless I'm missing something, all three commissioners support moving forward. We don't know what that looks like yet. A couple of you are meeting tomorrow, potentially with Rick Russell. At the end of the week, you're meeting with Mayor Fitch, and we're going to meet individually with Keith, the city manager. So I think the potential for gaining momentum on that 45 acres is really significant. And so let's continue this part of the conversation. It has great potential. And as we talked about with Linda, it maybe it's phased, but the great news is she shared with us, I think it's 21st Street is now.
Yes.
Like it's going to be extended in the fall, which then it gives us time between now and then to begin to plan for it, to gain agreement on number of units, what type of a camp, the costs, all of the different aspects of it. So after the meetings this week, I think we're going to be in a place to at least begin to take some of the initial steps forward in close coordination, collaboration, and based on your direction. Fair? Is that, yeah?
Sounds like it sounds like, yeah, we've got to get things all
Yeah.
put together this week because the fact that 21st Street is coming in, okay, we've got perfect timing to get something done. And we've got to get that land swap that we've been waiting on, for 20 years. So we are going to get that done. We will. I know it's what is the word? Challenging.
And I would like to hold on to the $1.8 million until we've explored with the city of Redmond what might be done with the 45 acres.
Okay, so then we wouldn't be coming back until Monday, after the following, not next week, but the following week. Okay, the 24th. Okay, so we'll want it on our agenda then for the 24th. But if you can update us before then, that would be really appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, so are there any other items?
We have a couple of other items. One is is it the COAC?
Yeah, there's a letter I was supposed to have. Yes. Thank you very much. Jen? Oh, Chuck, I didn't even know you were here. I could just,
That's Hannah.
you had your hand up, right? Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners, John Powder, for the record. So we received a request, I believe, on late Thursday afternoon from COIC requesting a letter of support sorry, I was just pulling it up. I thought I had one extra letter for myself, and I didn't. A letter of support for the COAC for this is a funding request that's being sent to ODOT for the fiscal year 24-25 Transportation Safety Action Plan Implementation Project. So before you is the letter of support consideration.
The letter says the 23-24 safety plan. Is that right? Working together on the 23-24, shouldn't it be 24-25 or something?
I can ask for clarification on that. They could be talking about what they're actively doing now and then what they're looking for support going
Okay.
forward. So I would have to get clarification.
Yeah, let's just check it and make
Yeah.
sure that that's
That was
right.
a cut and paste from the draft
Yeah,
letter
I
they
know.
sent us.
And I am going to be the Connect Oregon representative for our region. And our project is the 10 million that Redmond Robbins Field is asking for.
I'm good with this letter.
Yep, that's what we're looking for, and I can get clarification on the 23-24.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or edits for this letter?
Who's Walt McAllister?
That's a very good question. I'm guessing let's serve what ODOT.
Basic.
Since we're sending that to, let me
So this is the ODOT person?
It's,
Yes.
I'm guessing so because we're sending it to ODOT.
Yes.
It's the,
And then, so a COIC FTE to be a transportation safety coordinator. For 2 years. So is this gonna be like a temporary position or something, or? See, I don't know.
So your
much about
first
it.
question is, Walt McAllister is the Safety Communities Program Manager, and the Transportation and Safety Office for ODOT.
For ODOT,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. There's-
And then what's your second question?
Well, so yeah, what does the Transportation Safety Coordinator do?
So the regional, it's on the 1 to 3rd paragraph. The Regional Transportation and Safety Coordinator will liaison and coordinate with stakeholders around the region. They'll be responsible for planning outreach events, conducting studies, and taking actions outlined in the Tri-County plans as well as the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs and the Bend MPO's Transportation Safety Action Plan. There is more context in there that I can read. I was
Yeah.
just cutting it back to fit one page, but that was the.
Well, no,
gist
I-
of
The
what
page
you're-
is better.
Yeah, you're reading the words. I'm just saying, so Commissioner Chang's on the MPO, Commissioner Dare's the COAC, and I'm the COIC chair. I'm just trying to communicate amongst the three of us here. Is this exciting to have another person going around telling us that we should drive safe? Or I don't know what this is. The staff person.
Well, the one person I listened to is Robert Townsend. And he had asked for this letter and he actually was hoping that we would do a letter.
Well, that's fine. So then it
Yeah.
sounds like ODOT
I mean, Robert Townsend
Kind
is
of
one of the most conscientious people.
understands that there's money available, COIC is involved. So I mean, it lines up. But I just, yeah, it's just a new person in COIC.
And I'm just working off my knowledge of the Transportation Safety Action Plan, which I think is a very sound roadmap to improving transportation safety in the region, and I'm fully supportive of implementation initiatives related to it.
I'm okay to have my name on it.
Is the same. So this person's gonna develop advertising, communications, outreach, engagement, fatal and serious crashes.
I don't know, were you on the transportation meeting like 2 weeks ago for AOC? They had a presentation. Were you on that, Commissioner Chang? You were, weren't you? It was Marion County and Lane County both had this safety corridor
Yeah.
from the 19 plan. And I'm like, okay, why aren't we doing this out at Ricard and, 27th, where they're always having these really bad accidents? So,
Because they had to kind of
so,
sign up or step up to be like
Okay.
these pilot projects.
well,
Do
anyway.
that, which maybe we could do if we had a coordinator.
No, they actually said we couldn't qualify. Cody gave me like an hour read all the details because it's the city and then it's the county land. And yet we have these terrible accidents out there. And then people start flipping U's when other people are driving 60 miles an hour. Yeah, it's just like, it's an accident waiting to happen. And I'm not getting anywhere with Cody and with Chris. We've got to get rumble strips out there, where Ricard Road comes in and people are driving so fast out there by the landfill. So anyway, that's another story, but how frustrating is that we cannot get something done and there's a lot of, bad accidents.
And I'm just trying to learn about this. So COIC's total funding request is 295,000 of the 368,000 cost for the Transportation Safety Action Plan. Other funding includes in-kind contributions and local funds. I just don't know anything about this.
I mean, if you wanna learn more about, Commissioner Dare and I have said, we're ready to sign on. You can call the people at COIC, have all your questions answered and decide whether you want to sign them later.
Yeah, is that okay? Call Robert Townsend.
And just for information purposes, they are requesting, and it needs to be submitted with the grant application by Wednesday.
Yeah.
So they're on a strict timeline, and they did apologize for the tight return.
Okay, I'll do my homework tomorrow.
Okay, so I'll check that one question, and then we'll wait to hear back from Commissioner DeBonne, and then circulate the signature.
Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
We just need to, the board just needs to identify a commissioner to serve on the South Government Tract Large Lot Industrial Management Plan and Finance Plan. City of Lebanon has established this committee, and we have staff already identified, and they have one slot for a county commissioner, if one of you wishes to serve on.
Yeah, so a week and a half ago, they would go to Redmond and attend. That commissioner there was online, where he was kind of learning what was going on there, coming up to speed. You know, I'll offer to do it, but if you're interested in doing it.
Oh, well, I was interested in a way. I was coming back from the moon pit, so never knew how long that was gonna take to drive. So finally I got back to
Now you
my,
know.
yeah, now I know. Yeah, like really. Oh my gosh, yeah. Plus I went the back way. So, I don't know. It's a short project, isn't it? Like so many months.
Yeah, and I think it's 4 meetings total is what they're anticipating, which probably means a few more than that.
Okay, all right. Well, I thought it was fascinating.
Do you want to do it?
I would love to.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else?
I have anything.
Okay,
Tonight, the livestock depredation and financial assistance committee is meeting. Will be posted. A lot of the discussion tonight is going to be about outreach to other livestock producers in the community and prevention opportunities for prevention activity. There was for Commissioner DeVone's background on Wednesday, there were a good handful of people from the Huddle Road neighborhood who showed up, to ask various kinds of questions about the Fort Thompson property campground proposal. There was one gentleman who wanted to argue at length about whether there were fancy vans out on the national forest. So after going back and forth with him for a little bit, I told him he could email me and I would take him out. And so I took him out. So now this is for both commissioners. I took him out at 7:30 in the morning on Saturday. And we went to 3 spots and we saw 50 people, 50 dispersed recreational campers. There was not I was actually very surprised. We drove way in, off one of the forest roads that comes off Skyliner Road. I didn't see any homeless people. It was all fancy vans and, people, their SUV with 3 bikes, kind of on a rack on the back. So yeah, 50 different vehicles, all, high-end dispersed recreation camping. Contributing 0 to any kind of recreational facilities in the community. So, we walked away from that. He said, okay, like I see that I see that those people are out there. It was going to still be an additional step to convince him that translates into market demand for campground at the Fort Thompson property, but at least we got past the idea that there's nobody around here who's recreational dispersed camping. Last Thursday, I stopped by Health Services for the 50th anniversary of Women, Infant, Children event, which was really cool. They were, all these families who get regular WIC benefits. They came that day because there were opportunities to get additional benefits to use at farmers markets and places like that for fresh healthy produce and in some cases meats and dairy products and things like that. And there were just a number of other service providers who work with families with young children that were there. Many of the booths were county booths of various kinds. But there was a whole bunch of other organizations there, Neighbor Impact to the High Desert Food and Farm Alliance, et cetera. So, and then last, I wanted to share the basket that they sent me home with when I went to do the member exchange program, which AOC just sent out another notice about today or yesterday.
for the upcoming year. So I coordinated with Commissioner Thompson from Clatsop County and Commissioner Brady from Wasco County to do a commissioner exchange. We finally, early in the fiscal year last year, and we finally got it done just a couple of weeks ago before the end of this fiscal year. Hopefully AOC won't mind if we spill over into a second year because I haven't gone to Clatsop County yet, and none of them have come here to Deschutes County. But they gave myself and Commissioner Thompson each this lovely basket full of things that were made in Wasco County. The basket itself was made in Wasco County. I wanted to offer to share all the swag that's in there because I only need so many chocolate covered cherries, and there's a whole lot of good stuff in there. Everybody should take some things from there. And but I also wanted to kind of describe what I learned about the process of hosting one of these exchanges. So Wasco County did this. They had a staff person actually kind of collect all these, these made in Wasco County things and make this lovely little basket. And Wasco County also, I thought I was just going there and, we would go to meals and I make my own meals on a per diem. But they insisted on paying for all the meals beyond the breakfast at the hotel that came with the hotel. So probably covered, 2 lunches and 2 dinners for these other 2 commissioners that while we were out and at those meals organized guests to come and visit with us, paid for the guests lunches and dinners as well. So these are I didn't fully understand that was what we were signing up for when we signed up for this exchange, but that's the bar that Wasco County set.
So if we sign up for the membership program, connect with Wasco, that's the message?
No, I mean, my message
I'm
is,
joking.
that now I think we're on the hook to do this for those other counties when they come visit here. Talking about doing that in the fall, and I just wanted to just make sure that was all right with everybody before I started to try to use their staff and make plans for these expenses. I guess it kind of balances out. If I had spent money on all my meals while I was out there, then it might end up being just as much as us covering meals for those commissioners when they come here. But it's I don't know how to expense that. I know how to expense my own travel expenditures, but I want to just be 100% clear that that's the way I think this is going to work. We're talking about doing this in the fall. It's quite possible that so Commissioner Hagee from Wasco County, he popped in and out a few times. They handled the public notice for 2 commissioners being there at the same time, and so he was really excited about the whole thing. He might want to come come to Deschutes County or Clatsop County in the fall as well.
We can get a whole bunch of them, I'm sure.
For buying dinner.
Oh, boy.
Well, I support, doing a nice welcome, a meal or whatever is fine, and keep an eye on it, not too much, just a little bit.
Yeah.
But, and getting commissioner from another part of the state to come see how we do business here, or just the feel and the culture of the front office is very valuable.
Yeah, no, I found it actually very, very useful to kind of look at similar issues in a slightly different context, with, different county trying to solve the problems. Very interesting and very, very valuable from my perspective. And I don't know whether either of you have ever signed up for one of these exchanges in the past, but If you haven't, then, it just opened the application cycle. Which, if I remember, the application wasn't too extensive.
Yeah, I've done it a few times. And when we were down at AOC, I was connected with Commissioner Trieger from Lane County. And basically, I just had to say, well, let's go to your office, because we had talked, we had connected a little bit, we hadn't done an exchange. So we just walked right from AOC over to her office, and she showed me all around and to their conference room and everything. We talked a little bit of stuff. But yeah, it's a good relationship with somebody totally in a different part of the state.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, we were actually, Commissioner Chang and I were at the Health Awards last week at lunch. And the really good news was I got to speak to the woman who won the Health Awards for the schools, Ben Lapine Schools, and tell her all about the Canadian food. And because she makes her own bagels and bread, and they do lots of really wonderful things, but they don't come close to what really is happening in Canada. We have such an obesity problem in this country, 41% obese. And the school, Ben Lapine, still has low-fat chocolate milk available. And that has like the most sugar in it you can imagine. Anyway, I mentioned to her, please look up what they don't allow in Canada. It's eye-opening. And if we could start that trend here and carry on to the state and the nation, would be incredibly wonderful. And then tonight I have the Fair Association. So it was great. The Navigation Center got the other award. And of course, the person that had done the murder had been staying at the Navigation Center. So does that tell you how important it is to have social workers? And I just heard from Amy, and I'm going to give her another call about getting more social workers at the Navigation Center. So I think it's definitely a time that we've got to really pick it up. So anyhow, anything else?
One more item, yeah, I had the East Cascade Works, the Source Consortium meeting today. It was the budget meeting, kind of annual meeting. So the consortium is made up of the commissioners. There's an East Cascade Works board, representatives from education and industry, all at the table for employment opportunities, re-engagement, education. So the proposed budget was passed, and there's opportunity, though, if somebody wants to be on this consortium board, just to rotate the seats. I've been doing it for many years now. I was elected the vice chair of the Central Region because it's North, Middle, and South region of Central Oregon, coast to coast. So yeah, if anybody wants to work for consortium board, the opportunities there, but I'd be honored to serve also. Only a couple meetings a year. I do attend the East Cascades Works board meetings, probably about twice a year, and that's, as I say, that's for the industry and employment people.
So anything else? So are we adjourned then until Wednesday at 9 a.m.? Is there anything else we need to do? No, we're good.
Your question. Right, to ask you this.
Yeah, no.
The basket,
You know what?
honey, and
Yeah, I have.
I don't